evening, everybody. I am pretty wiped out. It's been a very interesting day, very interesting week. Wanted to talk about some breaking news, a video that we put out about another school threatening parents with DCF for unpaid lunches. But again, I'm in my car. I couldn't make it back to my studio. I just wanted to point out we don't do this uh, for any other reason except to give another platform for families to be able to tell their stories and get connected and get help, because as we've shared many times before, I truly believe, and I tell this to every family that contacts me, that when Jesus said that people love darkness because their deeds are evil, they don't want to come to the light, that these criminals that are trafficking children, the worst thing that you can do to mess up their game is to shine light on it. That's why they threaten parents. It's why they gag parents. It's why they operate in all this secrecy. And we do this for these families. My kids have been home for over a year now. And one thing I really felt like the Lord put in my heart was that it would not be appropriate for us to just take our kids and run and live in fear and be silent, because I think that's a dangerous place, and that's why we're going to have our guest tonight. But before we do that, we want to keep her in the light. We want to keep the situation in the light, and that's why we did this video recently. Ted's going to post it in the comments, and we asked people to share it because a few weeks ago there was a report of a school in Pennsylvania that was sending letters to parents, basically saying you haven't been paying your lunch bill, and so we are going to contact DCF for a neglect petition. And, it amazes me that some people, and I understand it's ignorance, it's lack of education about what's actually going on in DCF, but they're like, well, people should get DCF called on them for not paying their kids' lunches. And it's like, okay, that system is not to be utilized for a debt collection agency for other state agencies, because once those people knock on your door, only the Lord knows what's going to happen, because they're going to come in with guns blazing. They're going to find 50 things wrong with your house that aren't even wrong with your house. They're going to target you through this system. And so this anonymous reporting, this mandated reporting where they're actually using it as a form of a retaliation, I think should be illegal. I think the anonymous reporting should stop. I think it should be confidential reporting, but that there should be some kind of record so that if people have a history of making false DCF reports, they should go to jail, you know? And more and more, we're seeing dentists, we're seeing doctors, we're seeing schools basically saying, your kids are not yours. And if you don't do what we want you to do, because we are smarter than you, then we're going to make sure you get your kids taken away. And so we called that school in Georgia and talked to the superintendent. And he said in the video, I don't really have a problem with this letter. And I'd really encourage people to understand that to weaponize DCF, to get parents to pay their lunch bills. I mean, understand, these could be struggling parents, okay? They need help. They don't need to be attacked by the state. There's other means that we can provide. And then when that school in Pennsylvania got caught, they came out publicly and they apologized and they fired an administrator. And then they came out and said, oh, we're going to give everybody free lunches. And then a businessman offered to pay the entire debt off, and the school said, no, 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 no. You're not going to interfere with our assistance in this child kidnapping enterprise, because these Title IV funds, they go to schools for special needs children. They go to the psychologists through their Medicare fraud as they're misdiagnosing children in order to help DCF qualify for higher incentives on these kids. We have all these agencies tied in that are collecting this money. We just need to shut that spigot off, or at least have a higher level of visibility and accountability. So that's why we called this school in Georgia. We encourage people to share the video. We've encouraged people to contact the school in a respectful way and just say, you know what, I'm an American. I live in this state. We're seeing what you're doing. You shouldn't have that for a policy. You should find a more appropriate way to get parents to pay the debts that they owe you, but not threaten foster care, where children are in a higher risk of being harmed or medicated um, because you're mad they didn't pay you the lunch money. That's a new definition of schoolyard bully. And speaking of that, our guest tonight, Cindy Abcug, had her son stolen, as I believe was partially retaliation from the Adams County School District, that as she was trying to get help for her special education, her disabled child, um, and challenged the school and tried to force them to do their job while they're collecting extra revenue through Title IV for this child, they didn't like that. They didn't like being challenged. They didn't like Cindy coming in there and telling them how to do their job or to even do their job. How dare you, Cindy? Tell us professionals. And I believe they possibly initiated this complaint against her that resulted in her losing her child and not even being able to see him for almost 2 months. And if you're a parent watching this, or this is the first time that you've seen this, we're going to bring Cindy up here in just a minute. I want you to think about this. You're a parent, you're going on with your life, you already have a challenge, you're a single parent, you have a disabled child, you're doing the best you can, you're being a good mom, you're being a good dad, and you get these narcissistic, money hungry, professional child traffickers that just come in and turn your life upside down. And for 60 days, you don't even know where your child is at. I want you to think about that for a minute. We have all this commotion in the media, and I saw a video today of a young girl that is devastated because her parents got deported, and she's crying, and it is heartbreaking what's happening on our border. And I appreciate that it's raised the separation of children from their parents to the level it needs to be, that it's harmful. It actually medically, developmentally harms these kids. But unfortunately, people are just using it as a club to beat Trump or to demonize Democrats. And they're not looking at what's happening in their own country, saying, oh, these poor immigrant children are being damaged permanently by being separated from their parents for 30 days, 60 days. What about parents that have been terminated forever for illegitimate reasons? Or what about the mom that hasn't seen her kids in 6 months because DCF keeps moving the goalposts, her dad, and keeps putting burdens on them and not lifting them, not helping them, not doing anything for them, but gaslighting them to beat them into submission, to admit that they're terrible parents, even if they haven't done anything wrong. So they just grovel and curl up on the ground and hand their children over to be abused by these criminals. That's how I feel today. And so, excuse me if I'm a little intense. And that's why we do this. I get up at 5:30 every morning. I usually don't get home till 7:30. I'm sitting in my car to do this video because I haven't even been able to make it home yet. Working 12-hour days to provide for my own family. But I think this is important enough. So we need your support in sharing these videos, getting these stories out, and getting these families the support they need to combat this. Because the worst thing we can have is isolation. We don't want these families isolated. They need you. They need advocacy. They need people that are going to not say they're advocates and wreck their lives, but actually advocate for them, fight with them, get this information out. And so we're going to bring Cindy on. Go ahead and bring Cindy on and let her tell you a little bit about what's going on in her case. There she is. How are you doing this evening, Cindy?
Hi, Seraphim. How are you?
I am tired.
Yeah, me too. Thanks for having me on.
You're welcome. And I'm sure that it's been an exhausting journey for you. So just as a recap, if this is the first time that someone's watching our show, if you want to give just a quick backstory. So you have a disabled child, you were fighting with this school district, and a case got opened on you. And just maybe if you want to share a few things about what's happened up till this update and what you're going to share.
Yeah, sure. I'll give a quick an update. We're on day 85 today of my son being illegally seized by the Douglas County Department of Human Services here in Colorado. The Child Protective Services, the CPS, is they're under that umbrella of the Douglas Human Services, for any parent or any viewer who might not know.
Sorry, Adams County. I meant Douglas County. Sorry.
That's okay. I knew what you meant.
Adams are probably stealing kids too. All the counties are doing it, but sorry about that. Okay, go ahead.
I'm getting calls from Adams County too, from other parents. So, my I have 4 children. Youngest is 7. He has a seizure disorder. We were transferred out here to Colorado about a year and a half ago from Florida. He was enrolled in an elementary school here in Colorado, Pioneer Elementary School, and his doctor at the Children's Hospital. And the reason we were transferred out here is for his seizure disorder, for them to get to the bottom of it. So I uproot my life, come out here to Colorado. His head doctor in the Neuroscience Institute writes a letter to the school district telling them that he needs to have a paraprofessional, someone to help him at school. And the school board or the school district declines. The disability law gets involved and they still decline. So I end up pulling him out and homeschooling him because I wasn't going to fight that battle. And within a couple of months, I had this agency of Child Protective Services at my door, and they came under the guise of wanting to help me with like a medical appointment maker or a medical navigator. I told them I did not need that. And they removed my son under an allegation of possible misrepresentation of medical issue is the reason. They took him out of the house, no due process, no crime, no record, nothing. And they removed him from the house. He was playing Jenga with his sister, and it was 66 days until anybody in my family, his brothers, his sister, myself, his grandparents, his aunt, godmother, anybody had any contact with him. They allowed me to have my first visit after 66 days. They told me during that visit I was not allowed to tell him I loved him. I was not allowed to tell him that I missed him. I was not allowed to ask him where he was staying. I was not allowed to refer to anything that he had been doing over the past 66 days, or they would terminate the visit immediately, and they were recording it so they would know.
Yeah, let's stop there for just a minute, Cindy, because people may not realize this, and I don't want to move past that too quickly. I want people that are watching this to really meditate on this. You have not seen your child for 66 days, have no idea where they have been, have no idea of their condition, cannot get any information of where they're at, if they're okay. Not only the damage it does to that child, but here you get a visit and you can't even tell the child that you love them. And if you think this is just an aberration, the same thing happened to us, to where everything, we could not talk about why the kids were taken. We could not talk about the false allegations that were being presented. If we mentioned anything besides playing a game of checkers or chess, they would terminate the visit. They could record, we could not record. So they're manipulating the entire dynamic. They're causing parental alienation between you and your son. And people need to understand that this is damaging to families on a scale that we don't even know yet. So here you are, you get your first visit. I mean, people can go back and watch the updates and see that you were desperate, trying to find out where your child was at. And here they go.
Right
saying,
there,
you can't even say you love them.
Well, picture that 66 days, his case file is missing from the courthouse, according to them. I go right to the media. Well, first I go to the representatives. I try to ask anybody for help. And keep in mind, I was a parent who had no idea this was going on. I didn't understand the value of my son with his disability with this Title IV funding. When they removed him from the house with the false petition and the allegation, it's like a rubber stamp that the judge just signed. Nothing has to be proved. Anybody watching who thinks for a minute, this would never happen to me, you could be next. Nothing about my case was true. I still have not had a day in court. I never got a 72-hour hearing. I've never had a chance to present my evidence. and they tried to falsify a drug test, but I had done my own, thank God. And my son tells me in the visits, "Are you crying every night? Do you not want me there?" I mean, this is kind of the thing he's thinking. He has an intellectual and a developmental disability. So he's asking me, "Why don't you want me?" You know, this is how he's coming across. And when I asked the supervisor, "Why can't I tell my son I love him?" He said, "Well, because then he'll think it's his fault." You know, board. And I had got the judge off, the original judge, got the court appointed attorney off because she's in on it, got the guardian ad litem removed, hopefully. We're still waiting on one more signature for that. So the only people left are the department attorney and one caseworker, and was able to get around their contracted psychological psychiatrist. If this ever helps anybody, I was able to pull up the vendor contracts for Douglas County, look at who my enemies were, FOIA all their payments, see that they were being paid in the upwards of millions of dollars, know that, and and present that evidence to say, how are they going to give me a fair psychological evaluation ever?
Yeah.
So I was able to pick my own.
I don't mean to interrupt your flow here, but I think this is another important point, because they do this to parents, and parents are told, if you just comply, if you just do what we say, you're going to see your kid. They use the kid as a pry bar. So they want you to do a psychological evaluation. And one thing we always tell parents, don't use their psychologists.
Right.
But you took a different tactic, and I want people to understand that you can do this. So they wanted you to see specific providers. I remember you sharing this with me, and you didn't feel comfortable. So what did you do to disqualify that provider? You kind of said it, but you were blowing through it. I want people to understand that this is a smart move, because go ahead.
This was one of my most helpful tools for any parents going through this. Any county you're in, you have access, it's public information because it's government money, to who your county is contracted with. In other words, who are they paying? It might be under a different name. They sometimes have a different letter misspelled. It might be under doing business as. They might have the psychologist under an LLC. But if you dig through those vendor county contracts, you'll be able to see, and if you've already gone through the process, you'll be able to recognize quite a few people that they've had you go to. You'll be able to see that they're paying the transcript company when they change the transcript. You'll be able to see that they're contracted with the drug screening companies. You'll be able to see that they're contracted with certain people. Well, the red flag to me was that they were contracted with a certain doctor that they were paying very large amounts of money to on a monthly basis. And this is a doctor that they wanted me to go to for a child parent psychological evaluation. They had accused me of
therapeutic visit, right? Like a therapeutic
visit. Well, not a therapeutic visit. It was more, he's a forensic psychiatrist, if that gives you any idea. So he would be qualified as an expert witness in the court. And I think they were counting on that. I'm sorry?
For the state.
Yes,
normally.
Correct.
They're going to come after you and lie. And so you figured this out.
Well, what I did, I FOIA'd, which is Freedom of Information Act, all of his payments from the county to him over the last year. And anybody can do this, it's free. And then you can see how much money he's getting. And then I looked up how many parents has he ever not diagnosed a parent with an illness? Nope. Unless the county didn't want him to. Unless it was somebody who had an illness and they were trying to place them with the abusive parent. So there was a bias right off the get-go with the amount of money he was receiving. So I was able to, he ran for the hills. He didn't want to be part of it. So I was able at this point now to choose my own psychologist which they don't like, which I'm going to be able to pay for now. So I'll be able to pay for my own psychologist.
You brought that information into the court and got it on the record that it was questionable about him being unbiased based on the amount of money he was receiving. Is that correct?
Well, you know what's funny? This is what happened. When we FOIA'd his payment, the person who got back to us was the attorney for the department. He's one of the few players on their side left. He's the one who had originally emailed my attorney and recommended this psychologist, and I think you'll like this. So my attorney says, we picked this doctor, because I knew he would be easy to debunk on the stand with all of these facts that I had found out. So my attorney says, we picked this guy. And the attorney for the department says, no, you're not going to use him anymore. And the judge says, why can't they? You're the one who recommended him. He starts sweating, attorney for the department, and he says, Your Honor, she's on media saying we're trafficking kids, and she's tattletaling. She foiered all of this psychiatrist's payments, and now he won't do it. And the judge says, so it's public information. She says, I order her to use him. And he said, well, he won't do it. Then she said she can pick her own. I was going to be presenting the information, knowing that he wouldn't want me to, but it ended up that I didn't have to, because the department attorney kind of went a little bit, angry, off the wall, yelling at the judge that I was going on media. The judge could have cared less at that point.
Yeah, you've been very fortunate in that, because everybody doesn't. I think because you were so prepared from the beginning, and you have their, you busted them, that they're really scrambling to change this. So currently, you got to visit with your son, but he's currently not even in the state of Colorado. Is that correct?
Right. I had a second visit with him. Right. Let me roll back just a little bit, because this is important too. The department had given me and my attorney an incomplete case number. After doing one of the media shows, I did get an email from somebody who I anticipate either works in the Douglas County court system or somehow had access to my case number. So somebody emailed me the complete case number, and I was able to give it to my attorney. And when my attorney pulled that up, he was able to find that there was an authorization signed that was submitted by the guardian ad litem for my son to leave the state without my permission and go to Florida to Disney World. So I did get a lot of feedback about the Disney World sex trafficking and so forth. My concern was not that with my son. I do believe he was going on a vacation with the foster family. I think that my son, the concern for me was my son has a seizure condition that the department is ignoring. They're medically neglecting my son's seizure condition. The heat is a big trigger for him. And that was my concern about him going, not to mention the fact I hadn't seen him, and he was going out of state with people who I have no idea who he's going with.
And that's insane.
Yeah.
And so currently he is out of the state. But how is your case progressing? Are they giving you a time frame to return your son? When's your next court hearing? What's going on in that arena?
Okay, perfect. We have submitted on the second week of him being gone. I did fire my court-appointed attorney, and she withdrew immediately as soon as the media got involved. I told her we were going to file a writ of habeas corpus. I hired a new attorney. I don't know if you have the GoFundMe up there, but if anybody can help donate, I do not think I will get my son back without this attorney. And it's not because I'm trying to ask for money. I hate to do it, but the attorney that I have is not involved in this quote good old boys club. He's not in the family law, ring. So he has taken my case on a contingency of this GoFundMe. And he filed a writ of habeas corpus on the second week. We're waiting on that to be ruled on, so you can see how long that takes. A writ of habeas corpus is for illegal detainment. Currently, we have a jury trial set for October 28th, a 1-week jury trial that I would love any support at. It's going to be for 1 week long. My attorney is starting the discovery phase. He is starting to subpoena deposition. He's going to depose all of the workers that were involved, all of the doctors. He is going to subpoena all of the emails from the department and from their server that would be on the inside of them, that would be in regards to my son or my case, period. So any of the emails that would have gone back and forth discussing my son, I've asked him to subpoena those, if they're talking about it, how much money they're getting for my son, just to see if there's anything in there that would prove that this was fraudulent. He's subpoenaing all of my family members. They're flying in to be witnesses, as well as the doctors. So that's kind of where we're at legally. I do not have another. And he has a motion for my 7-year-old to talk to his 2 older brothers who are 22 and 26. They have not spoken to their brother. Today is day 85. The attorney for the department said because it wasn't safe. There's no safety issues. My boys are great kids. So it's
And
affecting the whole
they
family.
always say that, and then they won't ever present any evidence of why
Right.
they did it. They did the same to our son, and then it came out later. They admitted in a meeting, well, he testified for his parents. So we're not, for 2 years they kept him away from his brothers and sisters because he exposed their lie. And that's the thing that they hate. You're exposing their lies. You're challenging their mechanism for milking this Title IV system, and they got to find a way to retaliate. They got to find a way to shut you down. Fortunately, you've been pretty blessed with a decent change of judges, with people getting off the case. A lot of parents don't see this, but people still need to understand that she still does not have her son while she is fighting through these bogus allegations. The fact that she has to go through this whole measure to prove her innocence. There is no presumption of innocence. Whatever they say is taken as gospel truth, and these people lie, and there's barely a consequence from any court in this nation. It's disgraceful, and it should
It's
outrage.
unbelievable. Yeah. Seraphim, I had my son's doctor email me after they removed him and said, I told them not to take him, that no harm was done. The department told me my opinion didn't matter. This is a woman who went to school to become a movement disorder genetic neurologist. And this caseworker, 20-something years old, who knows what, decides this doctor's opinion about my son doesn't matter. They're going to take him anyway. I'm like, wow. So, at what point are they going to say, I have so much evidence of my son's condition. They also threw into the petition, just to make me look, quote, more like a monster, that I had given my older 22-year-old son chemotherapy. Like, you can find that on the corner. And I'm finding that this Munch proxy by syndrome fake diagnosis, which was given to me by a doctor that I had never met, and he'd never met any of my kids. And that's who was on my petition. It was a doctor that doesn't even exist in my life, or we had never met or seen. I'm finding that more and more of the parents contacting me are getting this diagnosis from attorneys, caseworkers. One had the diagnosis from a podiatrist. Pediatricians are diagnosing us. And this particular mental disorder, if you have it, every medical condition has to be ruled out on the child first, and then you have to be seen by a psychiatrist. A pediatrician can't die. A lawyer can't. Huh?
And they've done none of that. You still haven't even seen a psychologist yet.
No, they've done none of that in my case, but it's not just me, I guess, was the point I was trying to make. The amount of parents that are contacting me, this is their new thing, so to speak. This is their new, I guess, part of their business model. They're throwing out the Munch proxy by syndrome because it's kind of like a vague, general, overall thing. And they've got caseworkers, attorneys, podiatrists, pediatricians diagnosing it. It's quackery.
It's quackery, and they're getting away from. Ours was emotional negligence. That's what they try to say, which is something that's not even really provable. It's just an allegation, and then they throw a whole bunch of false stuff in the middle that you have to systematically disprove while being attacked by these people, while seeing their psychologist. And then people are foolish, and they trust it and say, oh, this psychologist will see the picture, and the psychologist is real nice, and they smile and they say, oh, that's really horrible. And then they write this horrendous report about the parent, and the parent's shocked, and they have no recourse. They can't fight it. They can go get a second opinion, but then they're fighting out of the background because the tentacles of this corruption go very, very very, very deep. And then if you manage to fight out of all the allegations during the course of all these psychological testings and going in your home and requiring people do certain services, they'll come into court and say, well, initially we were wrong. The kid was really sick. Sorry, judge, but we got this test done on her and she's crazy this way now, so we can't give the kid back. So they use it as an evidence gathering process to perpetuate the alienation of the parents from the child. And people just need to understand that this is really actually happening in this country. And our heart goes out to you, Cindy.
Thank you, because I come onto the shows, and to be honest with you, I do it all for my son, my little cutie pie, cutie bug son, and the level of depression and the level of emotional trauma that this puts a family through is undescribable. It's really the closest to hell, as you know, you can get. With that, it's undescribable. Today was the first day of school. I don't know. My son's out of state, so obviously he didn't go to school, but you can bet if I was the one who took him to Disney or took him to wherever he went, they would be calling it on me, and didn't send him the first day, but he's somewhere out of state. I've never missed a first day of school with any of my kids. And then you start missing all the things. So it becomes harder. And then you lose all your friends because people say, oh, there must be more to the story. And I have to admit, I would have been guilty of that 86 days ago. If somebody came, and we've got to have a paradigm shift here in America. And I see it coming more and more in this short little time I'm in it. You have been in it longer, so you may see it more, but
tremendous. Trust me, for you and many parents, when I first started fighting, me and my wife did a protest, a 3-day protest, or maybe it was 5 days. I don't even remember anymore. And we couldn't find information on the internet. We couldn't find groups to connect to. We had one random activist that was in the cannabis activism community contact us and tell us about a lady named Jennifer Wynn, who was being pretty active in her city, but she hadn't really been known very well nationally. And everybody was doing these little parts here and there. The media wouldn't touch it. Politicians wouldn't touch it. Nancy Schaefer tried. She ends up dead. And I challenge everybody, Nancy Schaefer, Georgia, go read her speech or listen to her speech on the corrupt business of child protection services. She was the first, prior to Twitter and Facebook, maybe the Facebook just started, senator that came out and said, guys, this is a scam. They're breaking up families. This is for money. And then she ends up murder-suicided by her Christian husband for financial problems that didn't exist and health issues that didn't exist, where they were shot with a gun that wasn't even the caliber of the gun found in the house. And even their own kids say they believe they were murdered. That's the level of corruption that we're dealing with. But as we began to connect with people, and then we went on our hunger strike, and people started getting on Facebook more and more, and people like Terry LaPointe started writing articles weekly, sometimes daily. I watched this explosion, and then Connie and the Family Forward Project, and now I believe there's people in every state fighting this. There's senators fighting this. There's representatives. There's oversight committees. We've passed legislation that's attacked the federal incentives. So yes, I see a crescendo of outrage, but it's still not enough, because these people are so crooked and criminal that even when they're under the microscope, they can't act right. They can't act constitutionally. They can't give people due process. And it's amazing because they're so used to getting away with this human trafficking. And that's what it is. It is human trafficking for federal financial incentives. And there's some other motives, but we're not going to get into those today.
And just to clarify that, prior to coming into this, by no fault of my own, and I wouldn't have picked this calling. I believe this is something God put me in, and I don't say God does this to people, but I think I'm on this pathway to help with the exposure, and that I hopefully believe in my heart of hearts that God will bring my son home to reunite with us. And I keep praying for that, and I could use all the prayers I could get. And I will say that I thought prior to coming into this, when I would hear the word trafficking, that it was either, just almost strictly sex trafficking. and I'm educated with 3 college degrees, I would think, oh, it just must mean sex trafficking. I didn't understand that child trafficking could mean we are going to remove your child from your house, place him in a foster care home, and we are going to make a lot of money doing that by moving a child from one place to another, collecting the funds, and that's the trafficking. I didn't understand that that was also called trafficking. And there's an unlimited amount of funds on this. Also, it doesn't, you're right, they act with impunity. It doesn't get my child back. My son's still not here. It doesn't matter how many laws they broke. We filed a writ of habeas corpus, which is pretty much the biggest thing you can file. They just wanted to dismiss it. I mean,
Or
it's
they ignore it outright.
unbelievable. Huh?
Yeah, or they ignored outright. We had so many
Right.
motions ignored. We filed motions for show cause to hold the social workers in contempt for not doing their job, and they would admit they weren't doing their job, and then rather than follow the the statutory regulations on how a show cause motion is supposed to go, the judge would just put it beside himself and say, "Well, we're not going to look at this hearing." Well, what are you talking about? You don't have the authority to do that. But the problem is, you can't do anything to the judges. You can't sue them. A lot of these prosecutors are immune, and we need to start eliminating some of this. There has to be civil and criminal penalties for the perjury, violation of oaths, fraud, fraud on the court, fraud in the Title IV funding. All of this needs to come to a head. Nothing enrages me more. Maybe not enrages me, but it definitely upsets me. Is when we went to the FBI so many times, and they kept telling me, "We don't have jurisdiction. We don't have jurisdiction." So we went back with a group of people, and I read the federal regulations that gave them jurisdiction and said, "This is your jurisdiction." And they would refuse to lift a finger. But God forbid, if a parent runs with their child, the U.S. Marshals and FBI are kicking in a door to take those kids back to these child traffickers. But it's not their jurisdiction. It's
Have you
really
figured
deep.
have you figured out why? I had somebody contact me a couple days ago and tell me that this particular administrative court, which is a business trading and operating under business, was operating under not land jurisdiction, not air jurisdiction, maritime jurisdiction. Have you ever heard
Yeah,
anything like that? So if they're
I
doing
have.
that,
And if anybody hears that, let me tell you something. There's a group of people out there that are, I believe, working for the people that are harming children. And they are challenging these jurisdictions of courts based on a legal ideology that may have some soundness to it, but it revolves around the sovereign citizen. You don't have jurisdiction because I'm not a US citizen anymore. I'm a sovereign state citizen. And they filed these writs against judges, and they challenged their jurisdiction based on admiralty law, and they say bars. There's all these weird legal arguments that sound really good that actually get people arrested. And a matter of fact, I think there's a mom in jail right now that was involved with the people that are spreading those ideas about the court. And eventually the FBI showed up and arrested her because they start harassing the court with writs. And it's like the IRS. Even if they have valid arguments, it's a valid argument. Go watch Aaron Russo's Freedom to Fascism. There is no law that we have to pay income tax. It's not there. It's not constitutional. Try not doing it. They're not going to let you get away with it because then everybody would get away with it, and it's too big of a hustle. So they're going to stop you, and they already have so much power. Even if your arguments are right and you go down that road and try to challenge your jurisdiction based on that, you're going to lose your kids. And I've seen people losing their kids over renouncing their citizenship based on jurisdiction, admiralty law, filing these writs. Don't go there. What we have to do is
well,
expose,
I
and I'm
wasn't
not saying you
planning on,
don't go there. I'm telling all these families, don't go there. We have to challenge
yeah,
this in a different way.
I ran it by my attorney and he said those words. He emailed me back, don't go there. And and that's what he emailed me back. Do
Because they
not
would
go there.
they would
And
target you as a domestic terrorist because sovereign citizens are listed as domestic terrorists. So if they can get you gravitating into that philosophy where the court can peg you as a sovereign citizen philosopher or legal scholar, then the DCF can say she's a terrorist. She's a danger to this child based on being associated with this group that we've determined to be domestic terrorists. We had people here arrested in Colorado following those doctrines, and they're sitting in prison at 30 years right now. I'm not playing.
I'm
You can look it up.
wondering, well, I guess what brought that up to my mind was I was wondering when you said the FBI kept saying they didn't have jurisdiction, because I called the FBI twice. They said the same thing to me. It's not our jurisdiction, but if anybody's interested, they'll get back to you. And I'm like, interested? What, you know, how can you not be interested in this? This is a child. This is my life.
They know what's going on, just like they knew what was going on in all the other corruption in this court. They know what's going on. They're not going to stop it. It's too big of a beast. And unless we get a president that's willing to take this head on, and I don't think Trump is that man. All these people cheering on Trump, he just came out today and said adoption is the greatest thing in the world. And I understand where he's coming from. He's probably coming from a place of ignorance. The adoption agencies are where they're coming to traffic these children. They run them like puppy dogs on websites. You can't post a picture of your child, Cindy, but DCF, when they're ready to terminate your rights and adopt that child out, will post his picture up with a bio, like a little puppy dog, try to get some family to adopt him so they can get that final incentive, which I hope is coming to an end soon with the Family First legislation. But they just don't want to do it. And the sad
You don't
thing
think,
is,
I didn't know he said that today. I didn't know that he said that, because that discourages me a lot, because I thought he had some kind of a handle of knowing what was going on. That's super discouraging.
He may, but from what I'm seeing, I mean, he's helping facilitate this trafficking. These detention centers for immigrants are being run by the Department of Children and Family Services and private corporations, the same people that are stealing kids from parents. So he's got a big blind spot in this. I wouldn't say he's not aware. I just don't think it's something that we need a president that's going to address this head on, that's going to recognize this is human trafficking. Families are being destroyed. 80% of people in prison have some kind of attachment to the foster care system. You know, all mass shooters are alienated from their fathers. Like 25% of kids, 1 out of 4 are over medicated to where people are getting sued because they're destroying little kids by putting 6-year-olds on Xanax with 7 other psychotropic drugs so they can collect all this money for the kid being disordered. Like, we really need people stepping up in every level of government. And unfortunately, right now, every level of government is still facilitating this.
I took all of my evidence from all the local, and you know how evidence really doesn't matter, but I took all of my evidence with the local violations, the ADA violations, the federal violations, and the state violations that this CPS had done, not just the no due process, all of the abuse violations, made up a timeline, put in my exhibits. You know, it was semi-thick. And I went down to the UPS store and I mailed it to President, to William Barr, to Deb Dybing, to all of my senators, to both of my senators, to my governor, to all of the county commissioners, to my House representatives with return receipts, so they would have to sign for it, so they can't say they didn't get it. So if anything, God forbid, happens to my son, you know, I tried to at least inform that by going to media. And I have quite a bit of substantial evidence proving that they have stolen my child right out from underneath me. And I know you know that because you looked at it.
No, and I do, and I'm sorry, I'm getting distracted. I forgot to put my phone on silent. Someone keeps trying to call me. Stop calling me. Actually, people need to call the 1-877 number. This is a call-in show if you have questions for Cindy. But Cindy, we're pressing up on time, and I really, really appreciate you and your strength and continuing to fight and using the time you have not to fall into despair and letting these people gaslight you, but to advocate for other families, to get out there and tell people what's going on. So you have a GoFundMe. I believe we're posting that up. Cindy said if you want to help, there's 2 ways right now. One, show up for a court. She's got trial October when again?
My trial's going to be October 28th for 5 days. I have the GoFundMe for attorney's fees. Any little bit, even $1 would help. I have me and Olivia Pleasant started up the RICO CPS. We started that about 2 weeks, maybe a week and a half, 2 weeks ago. We've got a huge response. If you want to Go to cps.com. We're collecting hard evidence from two cases from each state, and we're submitting RICO request investigation to the federal government to investigate CPS. Olivia can talk more about that on the show. Right now, there's a little bit of a longer turnaround because we got 79. We've got, I don't know, at least 300 requests so far for packets. There's a march that we're trying to do in October, the March for DC, the Dark to Light March, to spread awareness about CPS corruption. We're looking to, if anybody has prayers or would like to contact me or needs support or just some resources, you can email me at bringmichaelhome1111@gmail.com. Bringmichaelhome1111@gmail.com. Just even a word of inspiration or a word of, anybody gets a word from God in prayer, those mean the world to me right now because it's really a difficult time. Seraphim, you and your family definitely in our prayers. Keep up the good fight. We thank you and Ted for having me on, and just want to stay in the light. I like what you said at the beginning of the show. When you're in the darkness, can't see you. I think God doesn't light a lamp and stick it under a table.
Yeah, they hate the light. Any criminal hates to be exposed. We got to expose these criminals. We're definitely going to have you again on soon. We'll talk more about what's going on with Olivia. We tried to have her on as a guest. She's being attacked for that. Not for being a guest, but for what you guys are trying to do. We are going to close it up right now. So thank you for joining us this evening, Cindy. We'll keep in touch and hopefully have dinner sometime soon, and just definitely be praying with you. And we can even close out with some prayer right now if you'd like to.
Oh, thank you. Heavenly Father, we come to you right now and we just ask you to have mercy. This particular area, the CPS, have mercy on the agents that are blindly following the powers that be. We ask you to protect the children that are being trafficked. We ask you to put your Holy Spirit into the hearts and into the spirits of the parents that are being anguished and the children that are being anguished at night. We ask that you speedily reunite families that are just being tormented by being ripped apart. Father, we ask for miraculous healing with your Holy Spirit from the trauma result of the families that are illegally seized and illegally ripped apart from this corrupt system. We pray for President Trump and his administration that you will shed some light to them on the situation, how hard it is and how corrupt it is, how nationwide it is. Father, guide us and help us to spread the word. Lead us to the people you want us to help. And Father, protect our children with angels and a bubble of protection while they're not with us. And every tear that they have away, and just help them not get hurt and abused while they're in the foster care system. We thank you for Seraphim and his family. Protect them, protect Olivia and all the advocates out there. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. And I don't think of any better of a way to end this week's episode. I'm going to encourage you to join us next week. I'm not going to put the guest name out because I got too many trolls that try to run interference, but we have a mom coming on that won a lawsuit against CPS and is continuing the fight. She's going to tell you about her fight and her successful litigation against these child trafficking criminals. So until then, keep fighting, and remember that we hold these truths to be self-evident, that we are endowed by our Creator with these rights that cannot be taken, and we need to fight for them.